The silent witness. 60 motorcycles surrounded the small brick house on Maple Street. Margaret Carter stood frozen on her porch, her 5-year-old granddaughter Emma hiding behind her legs, watching through wide, terrified eyes. A massive man with a silver beard dismounted from the lead Harley. He wore a leather vest with patches marking him as president of the Iron Riders MC. Despite his intimidating appearance, 6'4", arms covered in Marine Corps tattoos, his voice was surprisingly gentle when he spoke. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Diesel. Detective Morrison called us. We're here to protect Emma." Margaret's hands trembled. "I don't understand. Why are there so many of you?" "Because there's a killer stalking your granddaughter, ma'am, and we're going to make sure he never gets close to her." 43 days earlier, Emma had stopped speaking. Not gradually, instantly. One moment she was a chattering 5-year-old who sang constantly and told elaborate stories. The next, complete silence. It happened the night her stepfather killed her mother. Emma had been in the pantry, hiding during one of David Reynolds's rages. Through the crack in the door, she watched him strike her mother with a baseball bat. She saw her mother fall, saw the blood, saw her mother stop moving. When police arrived, they found Emma sitting beside her mother's body, covered in blood, holding a red crayon. She hadn't made a sound. No screaming, no crying, just silence. Dr. Patricia Chen, the trauma specialist, had a name for it: selective mutism triggered by severe psychological trauma. Her brain shut down her ability to speak as protection, she explained to Margaret, who'd gotten emergency custody. She saw something so terrible that silence felt safer than words. David Reynolds told police a different story: a masked intruder. Defensive wounds on his hands from fighting off the attacker. The baseball bat had been wiped clean. No fingerprints except Jennifer's from weeks earlier when she'd used it to prop open a window. Detective Sarah Morrison interviewed Emma 7 times. The little girl never spoke, never nodded, never responded. Just stared with traumatized eyes that had seen too much. Morrison knew David was guilty. Every instinct screamed it. But instincts don't hold up in court. Without Emma's testimony or physical evidence tying David to the murder, the district attorney refused to file charges. "I'm sorry," Morrison told Margaret, frustration thick in her voice. "Without her testimony, we can't prove he did it." David Reynolds walked free, and he knew exactly who could destroy him: the silent little girl who'd watched from the pantry. 3 weeks after Jennifer's death, David started appearing wherever Emma was: at the park, outside her preschool, in grocery store parking lots, just sitting in his truck, watching with dead eyes and a slight smile. The message was clear: "I know you saw, and I'm watching you." Margaret went back to police. "He's stalking my granddaughter." "He's not breaking any laws," Officer Chen said helplessly. "He's not approaching her or making threats. We can't arrest him for being in public spaces." That night, Margaret sat in Emma's room watching her granddaughter sleep. This girl who used to fill every moment with noise was now silent as a grave. But she drew constantly, obsessively. Margaret looked at the drawings scattered across Emma's desk. The same scene, over and over: a kitchen, a woman on the floor, a man with something in his hands, a small figure hiding behind a door. Emma was drawing what she'd seen, every detail her traumatized mind remembered. Margaret photographed the drawings and brought them to Detective Morrison. The detective studied them carefully, her expression darkening. "These are detailed," Morrison said quietly. "The blood spatter pattern, the body position. This matches our crime scene exactly. This is testimony, Mrs. Carter. Visual testimony. Can you use it? Maybe, but I need more. I need her to draw David's face clearly. I need undeniable proof that only a witness could provide. Morrison looked at Margaret intensely. But if David realizes she's creating evidence against him, he'll do whatever it takes to stop her. We need to protect Emma while she draws, and I might know someone who can help. Marcus Diesel Coleman answered his phone at 6:47 a.m. He'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine before coming home with scars, PTSD, and a motorcycle. The Iron Riders had become his therapy, his family, his purpose. Detective Morrison didn't waste time with pleasantries. A 5-year-old watched her stepfather murder her mother. He walked free. Now he's stalking her. She's drawing evidence, but she needs protection. 2 to 3 weeks. Diesel was silent for a long moment. My daughter is 7. If someone killed my wife in front of her, I'd want an army protecting my kid. Give me the address. Tuesday morning, Margaret opened her door to find 60 motorcycles lining her street and 60 bikers standing in formation on her lawn. A woman in scrubs stepped forward. Dr. Sarah Chen, pediatric trauma specialist and club member. I can help Emma feel safe while she processes what she saw. Another biker joined them. James Rodriguez, attorney. I'll be filing for protective orders and reviewing the legal options. Margaret looked down at Emma. For the first time in 43 days, the little girl wasn't hiding. She was staring at the motorcycles with something that almost looked like curiosity. Diesel knelt to Emma's eye level. We're going to be your shadow, little one. Everywhere you go, we go. Nobody will hurt you. You're safe now. Emma didn't speak, but she took one tiny step forward. By Wednesday morning, Margaret's house had been transformed. 12 bikers maintained a rotating perimeter 24/7. When Emma went to therapy appointments, 20 motorcycles surrounded Margaret's car. At the park, 15 bikers formed a loose protective circle. David Reynolds noticed immediately. The first time he tried parking near Margaret's house, 3 motorcycles blocked his view. The bikers didn't approach him, didn't threaten, just sat on their bikes and stared. David left after 10 minutes. The second time he tried following them to the store, 7 motorcycles boxed him in, making it impossible to tail them. Legal, but effective. The third time, he didn't even try. Inside the house, Emma was drawing more than ever. But now the drawings were changing, becoming more detailed, more specific. Dr. Chen worked with Sarah, the nurse biker, creating a gentle routine. Every afternoon, Emma drew for an hour while soft music played. Sarah sat nearby, not watching, just present. She's starting to trust again, Sarah told Margaret after the first week. When children feel protected, their minds process trauma differently. She's not just drawing to remember anymore. She's drawing to tell. But on day 12, David made his first mistake. His brother Michael showed up at Emma's preschool, claiming to be her uncle there to pick her up. The teacher, briefed by the Iron Riders, refused and called security. 3 bikers who'd been stationed in the parking lot converged immediately. Tank, the club's enforcer, approached with calm confidence. You need to leave. Now. I'm her uncle, Michael protested. You just attempted to kidnap a child under protective custody, James, the lawyer biker, said, phone recording everything. Police are on their way. Michael fled. But Tank had photographed him, and James had recorded the entire attempted abduction. Within an hour, Detective Morrison issued a warrant for Michael Reynolds' arrest. The walls were closing in on David. On day 16, Emma drew something that changed everything. Not her stepfather's face. She'd been avoiding that, the trauma too fresh. Instead, she drew something no one expected. A different room, a different woman, a different time. Margaret stared at the drawing, confused. This isn't my daughter. This isn't our house. Detective Morrison went pale. She pulled up a file on her laptop, a cold case from 3 years ago. An unsolved murder. A woman named Rachel Martinez, killed in her apartment. The crime scene photos matched Emma's drawing exactly. "My God," Morrison whispered. Emma saw him before. David lived in the same building as Rachel 3 years ago. Emma visited him there with her mother. She must have seen something. A photo, evidence, something that connected him. David Reynolds wasn't just a murderer. He was a serial killer. And Emma had witnessed evidence of both crimes. The stakes had just become impossibly higher. Morrison called an emergency meeting with the district attorney. "We have 2 murders now, Jennifer Carter and Rachel Martinez. Emma's drawings connect him to both. Combined with the attempted kidnapping, the stalking behavior, and forensic review of the Martinez case, we have enough." "File the charges," District Attorney Rachel Kim said. "All of them." At 6:07 a.m. the next morning, police arrested David Reynolds for 2 counts of first-degree murder. By 6:15 a.m., his lawyer had posted bail. By 7:00 a.m., David was driving toward Margaret's house. The Iron Riders were ready. Diesel had anticipated this. By the time David turned onto Maple Street, 150 motorcycles filled the entire block. Not 60 anymore. Diesel had called in members from 3 neighboring chapters. They'd created a human wall between David Reynolds and Emma's house. David sat in his car, engine running, staring at the impossible barrier. Bikers held phones, recording. Others just stared with the intensity that comes from knowing you're facing a child killer. Diesel walked forward alone. He stopped 10 feet from David's car. "David Reynolds, you have 2 choices. Turn around now and leave, or try to get past us. If you choose option 2, understand this. Everything we do will be legal. We won't touch you, but we will follow you everywhere. We will document every move. We will make sure the entire world knows exactly what you did." David's hands gripped the steering wheel. For a moment, it looked like he might try to ram through. Then Detective Morrison's patrol car pulled up behind the wall of bikers, lights flashing. David put his car in reverse and left. He never came back. But he wasn't done yet. At 3:22 a.m. on day 18, glass shattered downstairs. Margaret woke to the sound, her heart hammering. She ran to Emma's room. The little girl was still asleep, clutching her stuffed bear. Tank and Diesel, on perimeter duty, heard the break-in. They were inside in seconds. David Reynolds stood in the hallway, knife in hand, 10 feet from Emma's bedroom door. "She can't testify if she's gone," David said coldly. Diesel stepped between David and the door. No weapons, no backup yet, just his body as a shield. "Through me," Diesel said quietly. They stood there in the dark hallway. 45 seconds that felt like hours. Diesel could hear sirens approaching. Tank had already called 911. David heard them too. David made his choice. He ran. But now there was attempted murder. Breaking and entering. Assault with a deadly weapon. The knife he'd dropped had his fingerprints. Security cameras Tank had installed caught everything. David Reynolds' bail was revoked. He was held without bond until trial. The trial started 6 weeks later. The prosecution built their case on Emma's drawings, forensic evidence from both crime scenes, David's stalking behavior, the attempted kidnapping, and the break-in. Dr. Chen testified about childhood trauma and visual memory reliability. Detective Morrison testified about both murders. James testified about the attempted kidnapping. And the security footage of David with a knife outside Emma's bedroom played for the jury. But the most powerful evidence was the drawings themselves. 24 images projected on screen, telling a story more compelling than words. The murder Emma witnessed. The earlier crime she'd seen evidence of. Details only someone who'd been there could know. Emma sat on Margaret's lap during the trial. She didn't have to speak. She didn't have to take the stand. She'd already told her truth the only way she could. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder. Attempted murder. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Breaking and entering. Life in prison without possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, Margaret collapsed into her seat, sobbing. In the gallery, 30 Iron Riders who'd maintained the protective watch sat in silent witness to the justice they'd helped deliver. Emma, still on her grandmother's lap, pulled out her sketch pad and drew one final courtroom picture. A little girl standing in the middle of a circle of motorcycles. Above them, words Margaret had taught her to write. My protectors. 3 months after the trial, Emma spoke. She was in Diesel's garage, watching him work on his Harley. She'd started visiting every Saturday with Margaret, just sitting quietly, drawing while bikers worked on their bikes around her. The rumble of engines, the smell of oil, the presence of people who'd risked everything to keep her safe. It became her therapy. Diesel was explaining how a carburetor works, not expecting a response. Emma hadn't spoken in 147 days. Then, clearly and firmly, Emma said, "The float valve regulates fuel flow." Diesel dropped his wrench. It clattered on concrete. He turned slowly to stare at Emma. "What did you say, little one?" "The float valve," Emma repeated, voice small but steady. "It regulates fuel flow. You showed me last week." This massive, scarred Marine who'd seen combat, who'd stared down killers, who'd built a wall of protection around a traumatized child. He wept. "Yeah," he managed. "You remembered." Emma nodded. "I remember everything now. I'm not scared anymore." Margaret, standing in the doorway, heard her granddaughter's voice for the first time in nearly 5 months. She ran to Emma and held her so tight the little girl squeaked. "You're talking! Oh, baby, you're talking!" "Grandma," Emma said matter-of-factly, "Diesel's teaching me about motorcycles. Did you know the engine has pistons?" The Iron Riders created the Silent Witness Project after Emma. They partner with police departments across 3 states to protect child witnesses, too traumatized to testify or too vulnerable to stay safe through official channels. In 2 years, they've protected 17 children. 14 cases resulted in convictions. 6 children who'd stopped speaking found their voices again. Emma is 8 now. She talks constantly, making up for lost time. She's in therapy, still healing, but she's a normal kid who loves dinosaurs, art class, and motorcycles. She wears a small leather vest with a single patch, protected by Iron Riders. Every Saturday, she visits the clubhouse. Diesel teaches her about engines. Tank teaches her chess. Sarah teaches her about science. The girl who lost her mother found 50 fathers and mothers. Margaret keeps all of Emma's drawings in a special album. The traumatic ones from those terrible weeks, preserved as testimony to what justice looks like when broken people stand up for broken children. But also the new drawings, the happy ones that show a little girl who survived because dangerous-looking people decided she was worth protecting. The original 24 drawings hang in the Iron Riders clubhouse. Below them, a plaque reads, Emma Carter. The girl who couldn't speak taught us that silence can tell the truth, and protection doesn't need words, just presence. Diesel looks at those drawings every day. He tells Emma's story to every new member, every person who asks why grown men and women spend their time protecting children they don't know. We protect because nobody else will, he always says. We protect because the system fails. We protect because a 5-year-old girl had the courage to draw the truth even when she couldn't speak it. We protect because if we don't, who will? David Reynolds sits in maximum security prison, serving consecutive life sentences. Michael Reynolds got 12 years for attempted kidnapping and conspiracy. Emma still has nightmares sometimes. Dr. Chen says she probably always will. You don't forget witnessing murder. You just learn to live with the memory. But Emma also learned that monsters can be defeated, that silence can be powerful, that drawings can speak louder than words, and that sometimes the scariest-looking people in the world are the only ones brave enough to stand between a child and evil. The Iron Riders tell Emma's story at every rally, every gathering, every moment when someone questions why motorcycle clubs matter. She was 5 years old and couldn't speak, Tank always says. But she drew the truth, and we made sure she lived long enough to finish. Sometimes justice needs a shield. Sometimes that shield looks like 60 motorcycles and 150 people willing to stand between a killer and his victim. Sometimes protection doesn't come from the system. It comes from the people the system taught you to fear. Emma Carter found her voice in a garage surrounded by bikers. She found her family in a motorcycle club. She found her justice in drawings that couldn't be silenced. And 60 Iron Riders found their purpose in a 5-year-old girl who reminded them why they ride, why they fight, and why brotherhood means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes a silent child just needs an army of protectors to help her find her voice. And sometimes 60 motorcycles are the only thing standing between murder and justice.